Indian rupee has touched a new low.
Indian rupee has breached a key psychological threshold. The rupee has sunk past the 90 mark against the dollar, extending an 8-month slide.
Is hovering near record lows against the US dollar. $1 is worth almost 89 Indian rupees.
ट्रंप की जीत के बाद इसका डायरेक्ट असर होता है भारतीय रुपया पर, तो इसीलिए हम ये वीकनेस देख रहे हैं.
Indian currency, the rupee, has been making headlines every day for the last few weeks.
मैं शासन में बैठा हूं, मुझे मालूम है इस प्रकार से रुपया इतनी तेजी से गिर नहीं सकता. अरे यार, नेपाल का रुपया नहीं गिरता है, बांग्लादेश की करेंसी नहीं गिरती है, पाकिस्तान की करेंसी नहीं गिरती, श्रीलंका की करेंसी नहीं गिरती. क्या कारण है हिंदुस्तान का रुपया पतला होता जा रहा है?
Our currency has crossed the 90 level mark against the US dollars, which means today if you want to trade $1 for a rupee, you will have to spend 90 rupees plus in order to get $1 in international foreign exchange market. Now this simply tells us Indian rupee has depreciated a lot since the last many years, and especially since the last many months. Because the time is not far when Indian rupee we could get for $1 we could just spend 80 rupees, or to get $1 we just had to spend 50 rupees, 40 rupees just few decades back. Now this simply tells us that Indian rupee has lost its value, has depreciated in international market and international foreign exchange market, and this should be very worrisome for India's public, for the government, and for all the relevant stakeholders. Now, what do you mean by depreciation of rupee? Why recently Indian rupee is depreciating? What will be the impact of depreciation, and what we can do to correct this problem of depreciation of rupee? All these things we'll be trying to understand in this particular session. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh, and you're watching Perspective. See, first of all, let us try to understand what do you mean by this term depreciation, or depreciation of any currency for that matter. See, depreciation refers to decrease in value of an asset. That's the meaning of the term depreciation. When we talk about the term depreciation in international currency, we say that the value of currency has come down with respect to other currency. Now, let's take an example. For example, to get $1, we have to earlier spend, let's say, 50 rupees. Now, to get $1, we have to spend, let's say, 80 rupees. So in this circumstance, now since we have to spend more rupee than before, which means Indian rupee has depreciated against the dollar. And if Indian rupee has depreciated, dollar has appreciated. So appreciation and depreciation, it is always relative. When we say Indian rupee has depreciated, we say that its value has come down with respect to other foreign exchange currencies or other foreign currencies. So which is why we need to understand the concept of depreciation and appreciation. It's very relative. Now let's understand depreciation in detail. When the value of currency comes down with respect to other currency, our value actually reduces. So for example, in 2011, $1 was 40 rupees, let's suppose. Now in 2011, if I had to buy one chocolate worth $1, I had to spend 40 rupees from my pocket. But in the year 2025 now, in order to get the same $1 chocolate which is there in US, I have to spend now 90 rupees from my pocket. Which means to get that same chocolate, now after 15 years, I have to spend 90 rupees. Earlier, same chocolate I could get for 40 rupees. This means the value of my currency has come down. And if the value of my currency has come down, you can very clearly see that the goods which are in the foreign countries becomes more expensive for my country. Which means when we have to import, our import bill goes up. That will be seen in the impact of depreciation separately. But in this example, you can very clearly see that in order to import now, it becomes more expensive for me to import that $1 chocolate in 2025 as compared to 2011. This is simply depreciation of currency. And in our example, we saw depreciation of rupee. Now, there is one more term, we call that term as a devaluation of currency. Now, depreciation means a reduction in the value of currency, but that happens due to market forces. So when a country intentionally decreases the value of its own currency, we call that phenomena as devaluation. So depreciation also value comes down, devaluation also value comes down, but only difference is that in depreciation, value comes down due to market forces. In devaluation, the value comes down intentionally because the country wants it to come down. Now, since we know the difference, let us try to understand the impact of depreciation of currency. Now, since recently our currency has depreciated, what will be its impact? Now, impact, first of all, let us see with respect to trade, because that is the biggest part where the impact could be seen. Now, trade, in relation to trade, simply we have to see impact on our imports and our exports. So, if depreciation of Indian rupee happens, import of same commodities becomes more expensive for India. So which means India's import bill significantly shoots up. India's import bill goes up, India's import bill rises because of depreciation of rupee. But if rupee would have been appreciated, then that import bill would have come down. Now you all know that there are some non-negotiable imports which we have to do. For example, it is oil and petroleum. There are certain minerals or there are certain to import any which way. Now, in order for those imports, our import bill significantly goes up, which is why this is one problem or a negative impact of depreciation of rupee. But there is second impact as well. Now, you see from the perspective of a US citizen. If US citizen in 2011 would bring $1 into India, that $1 in India would be worth 40 rupees. So, he would be taking 40 rupees worth goods and services from India, from that $1. But let's say that same person comes with that $1 in India today. How much worth goods and services they would get? 90 rupees worth goods and services they would get. Which means when a currency's value depreciates, more goods and services of that country can be bought by other developed countries whose currencies has appreciated. Now, for example, in this case, in 2011, $1 could get you 40 rupees worth of goods and services. In 2015, that $1 could get you 90 rupees worth of goods and services, which means the foreigners would be tempted to buy more from India because from the perspective of foreigners, now Indian goods are cheaper. So now Indian goods and services are cheaper because the value of their $1 is worth much more than 15 years before or 20 years before or 30 years before. This simply means that it might boost our exports as well. In numbers especially, if foreigners see that I'm able to get more goods and services, our exports would get boosted. And if you see this phenomena, that depreciation of a currency happens, import bill goes up, but exports also gets boosted. In this scenario, a country which is a production hub, shouldn't that country want that its export should be boosted all across the world? Definitely that country would want that. And this is exactly what our neighbor is doing. Now, China, over the last several years, has intentionally tried to decrease the value of its currency. Now, many students ask why. The reason is why China is decreasing the value of its currency is because China wants to boost its exports. China wants that for American people, for developed countries people, my goods and services should be very, very cheap. So that if they are very, very cheap, Americans would prefer more Chinese goods as compared to American goods. Because for them, for that $1, they could get very less American goods, but they could get a lot of Chinese goods, right? Which is why China intentionally tries to depreciate its currency. And that intentional depreciation is known as devaluation, as I've already told you. But in India, that depreciation is real, which means that depreciation is happening due to market forces of demand and supply. This is exactly what we see when we talk about impact of depreciation. So when Indian rupee is depreciating, very clearly we are able to see that our import bill shoots up and our exports also increase. That is one part. Now, another bigger question which we have to answer is that what is the reason for depreciation and what actually causes depreciation? Now, simply understand, as I've told you, depreciation of a currency, or leave that as well, determination of the value of a currency, that what will be the value of currency with respect to some other currency, it simply depends on demand and supply of currencies. So for example, $1 is equal to 90 rupees. It depends on 4 factors. One is demand of dollar. Second is supply of dollar. Third is a demand for rupee, and fourth is a supply of rupee. All these 4 factors helps us in determining exchange rate between a dollar and Indian rupee. Now, if dollar is more powerful or dollar is appreciating, then we would say dollar is being demanded more than its supply, which is of course the case, because since dollar is the world's reserve currency, almost all the international trade in the world happens due to dollars. Dollar is very high in demand, which is why dollar is appreciating and dollar is more valuable than rupee. That is for sure, that is given. Now, when we talk about Indian rupee would depreciate if dollar would appreciate. So that is one cause. But there are other reasons as well for which Indian rupee would depreciate on its own. That would happen when Indian rupee's demand is less and its supply is more. If demand of Indian rupee is less, would the value of Indian rupee come down or go up? Of course, come down. If demand of Indian rupee is less, its value would also come down. If its value comes down, it would depreciate. But Indian rupee can appreciate also. How it can appreciate? It can appreciate if the demand for Indian rupee is high. If more people demand Indian rupee, which is why the last question, that how we can treat the problem of depreciation, we can treat the problem of depreciation by increasing and creating demand for Indian rupee, which is why you must have heard of this topic, internationalization of rupee, where we were trying to build our trade pacts, our bilateral trade agreements, where rupee would be used as a currency. Now, if rupee is used in international trade agreements, rupee's demand would be higher as compared to its supply. And if rupee's demand is higher as compared to its supply, rupee's value would go up. So it would appreciate and not depreciate. So these are the factors which influence the depreciation of a currency as well. And depreciation can be corrected with this particular factor itself, that you need to increase the demand for Indian rupee in the international foreign exchange market. Now, since we have understood what is depreciation, we have understood what is the impact of depreciation, we have understood what are the causes of depreciation, and how do we correct depreciation, just simply understand this, that depreciation of currency is not always bad, which is why several economists these days as well are saying that depreciation of Indian rupee, let it depreciate because it will boost our exports. But always understand there is a very thin line, or there are always two sides of the coin. And there's a very thin line between the positives of depreciation and the negatives of depreciation. If that thin line is crossed, rather than giving positives, it would give us a lot of negatives, because always the aim should be to be at the appreciation side. That is, our aim should not be like China, where we depreciate our currency and we boost our exports. Our aim should be to become such a manufacturing powerhouse like US, that we are able to export our products as well, we are able to increase production of goods and services as well, and our currency would be the strongest in the world. Eventually, that should be the aim for any country when we talk about a depreciation or a devaluation. I hope you gained a new perspective from this particular session. Do let me know what are your views regarding this particular topic, where $1 has surpassed 90 rupees. The depreciation has been humongous. All the very best. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.